Internal Revenue Service IRS tax news. Taxpayers should file on time even if they can't pay their full tax bill. IRS Tax Tip 2020-83, July 9th, 2020. Taxpayers should file their tax return by the deadline even if they cannot pay the full amount due. Otherwise, they may end up owing even more because penalties and interest can cause a taxpayer's debt to grow. So note we've had some extensions here, extensions both in terms of some of the payments have been extended and some of the due dates for the tax return have been extended. You want to keep those two things separate in your mind. Your goal in your mind is to avoid penalties and interest. You don't want the tax bill to go up. A lot of people, if they're looking at the 2019, because some of these deadlines have been pushed out, may have multiple payments being due for multiple different things that got pushed out till basically the same deadline, which is now July 15th, and therefore they may not be able to pay some things at this point in time due to other circumstances, and all this all happening at one time, and IRS trying to put the whole thing together now to get things back on track, onto normal with this deadline on July 15th. So if you cannot pay the tax debt when you file the 2019 return on July 19th, then what you want to do is still file the return. You want to avoid the penalties and interest. Still file the return even though you can't pay the debt, and then work with how you're going to pay the debt with an installment agreement. So the general process here, note there's a couple things why people might have more problems this year than normal. One is that the extension was extended for the tax return for 2019, which was normally due in April, has now been pushed out to July 15th. Now, hopefully the taxes normally would be taken out of the income during 2019 when you get paid if you're a W-2 employee. However, if you have to make quarterly payments, say you're a sole proprietor, you have a Schedule C business, then you may have payments that you would be making, and maybe you haven't made all the payments, so maybe you have a tax that is due when you make the tax return or create the tax return for 2019, which you're going to do on July 15th. Even if you can't pay it, you still want to process the return. The other thing that was pushed out is the tax payments for 2020. So again, normally if you're a W-2 employee, then you're just going to be making your tax payments when your employer will be taking them out of your paycheck, and it is what it is, and you'll be paying them out through 2020. However, if you're a Schedule C business, then you have to make quarterly payments throughout 2020. The IRS has extended those for the first quarter, so now the first and second quarter would be due on the July 15th, which means July 15th is now you have 2019 tax return due. If anything's due on it, then it would be due at that time, and you have the 2-quarter payments for 2020 that would be due on that same deadline. So what you want to do then is file the tax return for 2019 to make sure that you avoid penalties and interest related to the late filing. And then you want to make sure that you set up, if you can, an installment agreement or something like that, so that you're on good standing with the IRS to help to avoid penalties and interest if you can't pay all the taxes, to avoid penalties and interest related to late payment. You'll still be charged interest on it, but at least you'll have a plan like a loan out there, and you'll be in good standing, which is more peace of mind with the IRS as you go forward, less likely to get nasty letters threatening collection action from the IRS or anything like that. So you want to basically set up the installment agreement. Now, the other option you have is, of course, you can put yourself on extension for as of July 15th, which will avoid the penalties related to the late filing. However, it won't negate any penalties if you owe any tax at that point in time. You still need to make the payment, or else you're going to have late payment penalties. So you can put yourself on extension, and that avoids one problem, penalties related to the filing penalties, but it doesn't avoid the other problem, penalties related to the late payment penalties. You'd be better off normally if to file the tax return, see what the actual liability is, and then put yourself on an installment agreement, and then just and do what you can from there, and then that way you'd be in good standing. That would create more peace of mind usually, and be better, overall financially typically. Okay, back to the text. If a taxpayer owes taxes but can't pay by the July 15, 2020 deadline, they should file their tax return or request an extension of time to file. Taxpayers who can't file their return, there's a link to that here, on time, should request an extension to file. So there's an extension link here, so you can link to the extension to file an extension. Not too difficult typically to do so. You could typically do that online. Back to the text. Without this extension, they may face a failure to file penalty. So that's the problem. Either you file the return or you file an extension, or you get the failure to file penalty. That's the thing you're trying to avoid, and then interest will accumulate on top of that. So that's one penalty related to filing. The other penalty is related to the payment process. Back to the text. To get an extension to file, taxpayers must do one of the following. File Form 4868, there's a link to that here, through their tax professionals or tax software, or use Free File on IRS.gov. So if you have a tax professional, they should be able to process that for you. If you don't have a tax professional, you don't want to pay someone to process that form, you don't typically need to. You can go to the IRS Free File online, and they can do that for you there. It's nice to do it through the tax professional because they can help you out with any payment that you might be needing at that time, and they can also have it on their records if you have someone that you're paying for the tax professional to do that. But if not, then you don't need a tax professional to fill out this form. It's really easy. so you can go to the free file, or you can actually go to the form on the IRS website and take a look at it there. If you plan on purchasing software to do your own tax returns, such as H&R Block or Intuit software, which is the owner of QuickBooks, which is TurboTax, then I believe those softwares should be able to process the extension electronically as well. So back to the text. Submit an electronic payment with direct pay. So there's a link to the electronic payment here. With direct pay, there's a link to that. Electronic federal tax payment system, there's a link to that. Or debit, credit card, or digital wallet, there's a link to that. And select Form 4868 or extension as the payment type. So when you go on extension, then you're going to have to estimate how much tax you're going to owe. That's going to be the most complex thing. And most people are going to say, I don't know. I didn't file the tax return. I have no idea. Well, it's an estimate. So no one knows, until they file a tax return. So you're going to have to, put the estimate there because you're trying to pay them. The reason is you're trying to pay them enough that you do not have penalties. You'd like to pay the tax if you can to avoid the penalty. So, put the amount that you can pay. And if you're filling this out through the IRS website, then and you owe money. If you think you owe money, if you don't owe any money, then you just file the extension, no problem. If you expect a refund, then you're gonna or if you can't pay it, you file the extension, and it is what it is. And you set up a payment plan later. But if you owe money, then you're gonna have to file the extension. If you do it through the IRS website, if you do it through a tax professional, they might be able to process the payment with the software. You might be able to process the payment with the software if you're using an H&R Block or TurboTax. If you're just filing the extension online and you owe money, then you file the extension and you use one of these payment options then to pay the IRS any tax that would be owed in order to avoid the penalties. When you do so, however, make sure that you note that the payment is going towards the extension form, 4868. That tells the IRS, hey, this payment is for tax year 2019. Apply it to tax year 2019. Do not apply it to tax year 2020 or any other debt that I might owe, because that's just going to confuse everybody. So make sure that you tell them to apply it to the proper place. Form 4868, 2019 tax return. Back to the text. Pay what they can by the deadline. Taxpayers must pay their bill. There's a link to that here, on time. If they don't, they could face a failure to pay penalty. So here's the other penalty. We had a failure to file penalty that you want to avoid, and now here's the failure to pay penalty, two different things. So you can have a link to that if you want more information on that particular penalty. It's a very interesting topic. Back to the text. Taxpayers should remember that an extension of time to file is not an extension of time to pay. An automatic extension of time to file will process when taxpayers pay all or part of their taxes electronically by Wednesday, July 15th due date. Set up payment plan. So next process, set up payment plan. I'm expecting a lot more people will not be able to pay at this deadline because they kind of pushed everything out, and now they're just going to basically start everything up, get back to normal starting now, meaning a lot of things are coming due, like starting now. So that means that we might have a lot of people that might not be able to pay, and therefore need to set up a payment plan. That's a scary process if you've never done so with the IRS, but it's pretty easy, and you don't even need to talk to anyone a lot of the time. You can just go to the IRS website and set up the payment plan if you need to do so. So set up payment plan. Taxpayers who know they owe taxes but can't pay, there's a link to that here. By the deadline, have options. There's a link to the options here. For example, they can apply for a payment plan. That's going to be the most normal option, right? You can't pay. You say, hey, I can't pay. I know I owe it because it's taxes. It is what it is. Let me set up a payment plan. So you're going to charge me some interest. It'll be like a loan. Set up the payment plan. I'll make the payments and do what I got to do. That's the normal process. Back to text on IRS.gov or writing using Form 9465 Installment Agreement Request. There's a link to the Installment Agreement Request here. The tax filing deadline, there's a link to that here, has been postponed to Wednesday, July 15, 2020. The IRS is processing tax returns, issuing refunds, and accepting payments. Taxpayers who mailed a tax return will experience a longer wait. There's no need to mail a second tax return or call the IRS. So once again, the IRS is pushing to do electronic tax returns. Now, again, your goal here is to avoid penalties and interest, right? So if you're getting a refund, then you probably want to surely process the tax return electronically. That'll avoid the penalties and interest as long as you get it on time, and then you'll get your refund faster because they'll process it. If you owe them money, then you could send them a paper return. You could send them a check, as long as you get it in on time. And it might take them longer to process the check, so that which might not be a problem on your end as you give them the check. So in that case, maybe the longer wait's not a problem. But just note that they're pushing to try to do things electronically. You want to make sure that you get the thing on time either way, whether you mail it or you send it in electronically. If you mail it in or if you send a payment that's not electronic, you want to make sure that you have verification that you've sent it in before the deadline so they don't process penalties and interest on that payment type. But the IRS is pushing towards, electronic filing, and that's usually the easier, thing to do because that's what they're aiming for at this time. And then there's going to be more information, links below, so you can take a look at those links. There'll be a link to this in the description.